Before alarms shout and screens glow, there is a thin golden silence that belongs only to you. It is the air before the day breathes, the hush before decisions begin knocking. I know the ache that can live here, the heart that wakes already racing, the body that remembers yesterday's rush, the mind that starts tallying problems before your feet touch the floor. If your mornings have felt like a storm you step into without a coat, I see you. You are not weak. You are weary from beginning unprotected. So much of this is not your fault. The world has trained your attention to sprint before it can stand. You fall asleep promising a clean start, and the morning arrives crowded with notifications, obligations, and the unfinished lists that seem to write themselves across your chest. It is easy to think, if I wake up motivated, I'll be fine, and then feel guilty when motivation doesn't come on command. But the truth is simpler and kinder. Motivation is a guest. Order is a host. When the host prepares the room, the guest arrives. When the host is absent, the guest drifts away. There is no accusation in this, only an invitation to prepare the room. Your nervous system is listening in these first minutes. Breath deepens. Shoulders either rise like shields or soften like curtains opening. The heart sets its tempo. The brain shifts from the haze of sleep into a focused state, and those early inputs begin to teach your attention what to value. If the first signals are frantic, your body obeys with a small flood of urgency. If the first signals are steady, your body remembers calm and builds from there. What you allow in the doorway becomes the traffic pattern of the day. Begin with noise, and noise multiplies. Begin with clarity, and clarity gathers. Ancient wisdom understood this long before we had the language of neuroscience. In Solomon's world, cities placed guardians at the gate. The gate was not merely wood and iron, it was judgment, timing, order. Markets waited. Voices waited. Weights and measures were checked for honesty before coins changed hands. The gate set the tone for everything inside the walls. Guard the gate and the city flourished. Neglect the gate and the city paid for it all day long. This is not religion pressing on you. It is practical spirituality showing you a pattern. Wisdom first, activity second, order before intensity, truth before talk. Look at your own gate. The first voice you hear, the first picture you see, the first promise you make to yourself. When the phone becomes the gatekeeper, any stranger can enter. When hurry becomes the gatekeeper, your best work pays the tax. But when you choose a quiet breath, you choose leadership. When you choose a small act of order, you choose freedom. When you choose a few honest words, you choose alignment. Choose quiet, and your body hears safety. Choose order, and your mind hears direction. Choose truth, and your spirit hears home. This is not a plea to grind harder, nor a romance with perfection. It is a firm, compassionate naming of what is real. The first minutes are leverage. Slow is not weak. Slow is precise. Slow is sovereign. The day does not need you to explode. It needs you to arrive. You cannot shout your way into wisdom, but you can build it. One calm choice, then another. You do not need another tool if you do not have a pattern. Patterns make tools effective. Patterns teach your emotions where to settle and your actions where to begin. Here we will craft a pattern, not a performance, a pattern. 5 deliberate moves, small enough to repeat, strong enough to steer. They will touch your body with breath and posture, your mind with attention and choice, your spirit with meaning and honor. Expect gentleness, expect clarity, expect the relief of decisions made once, then lived out quietly. This is practical spirituality, working with emotional science. The inner life meeting the outer schedule, wisdom walking with you into the hallway light. For now, notice the room you are in, the temperature of the air, the weight of your shoulders, the place your feet meet the floor. Let the breath enter low and leave slowly, as if you are telling the body, we are safe to begin. We are safe to think clearly. We are safe to choose. You are not behind. You are not late. You are at the gate, and the gate is yours. We will move forward with care, calm, ordered, truthful. The marketplace of the day can wait a moment longer while you take your place as guardian. You have permission to start small and start steady. The sun is already rising. Let the first light teach your attention what to seek. Let the first words crown your mindset with purpose. Let the first choice be wisdom. There are mornings that feel like an unfinished conversation you step back into without knowing what was said. The bed is warm, the air is cool, and somewhere between the first breath and the first thought, a familiar current begins to pull. Messages wait, promises hover. The day hums just beyond the door, as if it has already chosen you before you can choose yourself. If you carry a quiet dread here, if you have felt the weight of a day that seems to start without your consent, I understand. This is not laziness. This is a heart that has been meeting the world before meeting its own center. A common belief slips in during this vulnerable moment. It whispers that a strong morning depends on a sudden spark. If motivation appears, all will go well. If it hides, the day is lost. That belief feels logical and it feels cruel. It makes your worth ride on weather you cannot control. Wisdom offers a gentler law. Order precedes inspiration. Winners design mornings. Feelings catch up. The body hears this line with relief because it recognizes pattern. The nervous system steadies when it can lean on sequence rather than mood. Steady inputs begin to tune heart rate and attention toward clarity. Small signals become a quiet choir saying the day is safe, the day is directed, the day can unfold in peace. Imagine a city whose gates open to merchants, travelers, and news from the road. In the days of Solomon, those gates were not decoration. They were judgment, rhythm, protection. Before any trade began, scales were checked for honesty. Voices were weighed for truth. Timing mattered as much as goods. This image speaks to something modern science affirms. Early cues set the template for neural pathways that will repeat across hours. A sudden flood of novelty trains the brain to chase. A measured sequence trains the brain to lead. The gate chooses the traffic. The city follows. There is a pattern that respects this gate. It is modest in shape and royal in effect. It begins with breath that is slow and low, breath that tells the body it is safe enough to think clearly. It moves to a short reading of wisdom, with a few simple lines captured on paper so truth does not slip through the fingers. It gives shape to the day, with a brief naming of the outcomes that truly matter, so the mind can stop negotiating with every shiny distraction. It ends with a light touch to the room itself, a small clearing of the surface where work will happen, a quiet resetting that says the path is open. Nothing here screams, nothing here scolds. It is order in service of freedom. Notice what happens when such a sequence becomes familiar. Muscles unclench, the jaw lowers from its guarded place, the eyes stop scanning for a threat that never introduced itself. The heart learns a calmer pace and begins to keep it. The brain shifts from scattered attention to a focused presence that feels almost like warm light gathering in a single window. You are not forcing anything here. You are letting the body remember what it already knows. Rhythm creates safety. Safety creates strength. The pain that used to begin the morning starts to loosen its grip. Reactive habits lose their favorite moment of invasion. That background worry that you might lose the thread is answered by a practice that hands you the thread before the noise arrives. This is not a perfect cure. There will be days of rain and days of rush. Yet there is a new floor beneath your feet, a sense that whatever waits beyond the door must pass through a gate you now guard with quiet authority. Consider the old belief again, the one that waits for a spark. It promised a shortcut and delivered a gamble. The new way does not gamble. It builds. It builds with breath you can feel in your belly. It builds with words of wisdom that move from page to heart, with the simple act of writing them down. It builds with a brief naming of what matters most, so that choice has a place to belong. It builds with a small gesture of order in the room, so that the eyes agree with the intention. Each piece is small. Together, they are a hinge that turns the door. The metaphor of the gate is not poetry only. It is instruction written in the body. When the gate is strong, fewer intrusions feel like emergencies. When the gate is tended, fewer temptations gain the right to define your day. This is how a person who has always felt behind begins to feel in front, without rushing, without noise, without a fist closing around the hours. The city within you hears the rhythm at its entrance and begins to answer with steadiness in its streets. If there is a memory that hurts here, perhaps of mornings that began in chaos and ended in regret, let it be met with compassion. Those mornings were not proof that you cannot change. They were proof that the gate was unguarded and the merchants of hurry walked in shouting. Today the image is different. The gate stands in quiet dignity. Breath moves like a river that knows its banks. Words of wisdom sit like stones at the edge of the path. A short list of true outcomes becomes a lantern for the first bend in the road. The surface where you will work is cleared like a doorway swept clean. Order precedes inspiration. Winners design mornings. Feelings catch up. Let that refrain become a soft drum in the background, not a command. A cadence. Let it carry through your chest and into your shoulders and down your arms, into your hands. Feel how the body responds to a sentence that does not pressure but guides. Feel how the mind settles when it is given a path rather than a demand. This is practical spirituality meeting the language of the nervous system. This is wisdom that can be lived without strain. The first hour is a gate. When it opens with calm sequence and honest intention, the whole city benefits. Work becomes cleaner, speech becomes gentler, choices become truer. There is room for grace. There is room for strength. There is room for a day that does not own you because you already took your place at the entrance. Words can soothe or slice long before the kettle begins to warm. Before the sky has fully decided on its color, the mind often wakes with a whisper that is not gentle. It names old worries by their first names. It replays conversations that never found closure. It invents arguments with people who are not even in the room. This is a tender hour and a dangerous one. The body is still crossing the bridge from sleep to wakefulness, while the inner voice runs ahead and starts shaping the air. If you have felt that small storm breaking inside your chest before breakfast, you are not broken. You are human, and you are listening to a voice that has not yet learned your deeper rhythm. There is a comforting myth that tries to help and often harms. It says that if you collect enough bright lines and repeat them again and again, the inside will become quiet and strong by magic. Sometimes those bright lines do help, and sometimes they ring hollow. The gap between what is said and what is lived begins to ache. The nervous system can feel the distance between a shouted promise and a steady truth. The heart can tell when language is painted over fear instead of held together with honesty. What actually brings relief is simpler. Alignment is stronger than noise. When the words match what matters, and when they arrive with the right weight and timing, the inner weather begins to clear. Truth, necessity, and timeliness are not fancy, they are medicine. Imagine the interior of your mouth as a small room where decisions begin. The tongue is not heavy, yet it can move a life. A slight shift in how it speaks can change the path of the whole day. Ancient wisdom offered an image for this. A simple bit, placed in the mouth of a strong horse, turns powerful movement into guided movement. The strength does not disappear. It learns direction. In the same way, small and honest words do not cancel emotion. They steer it. They accept its energy and give it a lane. Power remains, but panic is relieved of the task of choosing the road. There is a quiet practice that helps the body and mind agree. It is not loud, it is not long. It takes the space of a few breaths. A short line is crafted each morning with care and humility. 12 simple words are enough. The line names who you are at your best and what you are here to do today. Identity and duty standing side by side, a calm ruler inside. Wise choices chosen one at a time. A few outcomes that matter lifted above the noise. When this line fits the truth of your season, the spine seems to lengthen a little, the shoulders soften, and the gaze steadies. The nervous system recognizes coherence and begins to stand on it. The science of this is not far away or complicated. The first sounds you hear and speak in the morning start the tuning of your attention and your autonomic patterns. When the body receives words that are both kind and clear, Breathing settles into the lower ribs and belly. The heart finds a gentler pace, and the mind begins to release its grip on the unchosen and grasp the chosen. Repetition has power when it is married to honesty and purpose. Without that marriage, repetition can turn into a chant that exhausts more than it heals. With that marriage, repetition becomes a ritual that reminds the body it has a center and reminds the soul it has a compass. Some people write the line where the eyes will meet it early, a small card near the glass where water waits, a quiet screen that glows with meaning instead of novelty. Some speak the line once in a voice that belongs to them, not a performance voice, a steady one, not a shout, a firm kindness. There is a momentary stillness when the last word settles. In that stillness, the body seems to say that this is the north for today. That stillness is not empty. It is charged with direction. The old habit may tug at your sleeve again. Worry will try its best to audition for the role of protector. It will speak quickly and point to every possible danger and demand a new script every morning. Alignment answers differently. Alignment does not promise a perfect day. It promises a true beginning. Alignment does not erase emotion. It gives emotion somewhere safe to stand. Alignment turns the inside voice from a critic into a witness, and from a witness into a guide. Alignment does not ask for volume. It asks for integrity. The image of the horse and the small bit continues to teach. Strength without guidance can sprint and stumble. Strength with guidance can run far and arrive whole. A life can feel like that. The emotions that used to drag the day into the ditch are the same emotions that can pull you up the hill when they are directed by a sentence that fits the truth. The body does not need loudness. It needs a consistent signal that does not lie. The mind does not need 1,000 arguments. It needs a single line that is both humble and brave. If there is guilt here from mornings when language turned sharp and left a mark, let that guilt soften in the light of understanding. You were trying to get control by grabbing the wheel with fear. You were trying to find assurance by rattling the cage of your own heart. You were trying to be safe. Safety grows not by shouting, but by steadying. It grows when words and values shake hands. It grows when the inside and the outside stop fighting and start agreeing on a tone. There is a tenderness in the body when the right words arrive. Muscles that were clenched as if holding back a storm begin to loosen. The breath that kept catching in the throat lengthens into a quiet river. The brow relaxes and the eyes stop scanning for a threat that is not present. The stomach unclenches, the hands uncurl, and a subtle warmth returns to the chest. These are signs that the message has reached home. They are signs that the line you shaped is doing its work from the inside out. Morning by morning, a pattern like this does more than make you feel better. It organizes your power. It turns speed into stride. It turns opinion into action. It turns desire into duty that still carries joy. The path from waking to working becomes smoother and kinder, not because the world changed overnight, but because the first voice changed and taught your body how to listen. The day that once felt like a room full of strangers becomes a house where you know the rooms by heart. Command your tongue before it commands you, not with harshness, with honor, not with panic, with presence. A few honest words set at the beginning can hold the shape of the next many hours. That is not hype. That is alignment. That is the quiet authority that grows when the inner voice stops pulling you in pieces and begins to gather you in one place. This is practical spirituality, walking with emotional science. This is wisdom, learning to speak in your own mouth. There are mornings when the phone glows like a small sun and everything inside you turns toward it. The body is barely awake, and yet the thumb already knows its path. A message, a headline, a cascade of images, and the day begins to splinter before it has a shape. The chest tightens in a way you recognize. The forehead leans forward as if pulled by an invisible thread. The first hour that could have been a clean shore becomes a crowded harbor. If this has been your pattern, there is nothing wrong with you. Your attention has been trained to run before it can stand. A friendly lie is often waiting here. It says that handling many things at once is the badge of of a strong mind. It says that switching quickly is the same as moving wisely. The nervous system knows better. Every switch is a small tear. Every detour leaves behind a residue of unfinished tension. The brain carries these residues like pebbles in the shoe, and by midday the stride is shorter, the patience thinner, the voice a little sharper. The heart learns to live on fragments and calls it normal. It is not failure. It is the mathematics of scattered focus. Focus is wealth, leakage is poverty. That sentence is not a slogan. It is a quiet accounting of energy, clarity, and time. Where attention gathers, life profits. Where attention leaks, life pays. This is true in work and in love, in craft and in rest. You can feel the truth of it in the body. When attention gathers, breath deepens and the shoulders lower. When attention leaks, breath gets shallow and the jaw holds. The day becomes a ledger, and the first hour decides the margin. Ancient wisdom drew a picture for this: a vineyard on a bright hillside, vines curling toward light, fruit forming in silence. A tender worker with careful hands snips away what steals strength. It is not punishment. It is care. Early pruning is an act of mercy, because a vine that gives everything to everything cannot give well to anything. Modern language calls this selective attention. Old language calls it tending the garden of the mind. Both point in the same direction. Keep what feeds the fruit, release what drinks the root and offers nothing back. There is a simple way many people honor this. A harvest page waits where the day begins, holding the single task that moves the story forward. Not the loudest task, the truest one. Nearby rests a guard list, a short line of gates that remain closed until the sun has climbed. This might mean messages sleep a little longer. This might mean news waits for its time. This might mean favorite sights are treated like dessert rather than breakfast. It is not austerity. It is sequence. It is the difference between being led and being dragged. The body loves sequence. When novelty floods the early minutes, dopamine surges and the brain begins to search for more. The search never quite satisfies. When a clear path is set, the prefrontal regions that guide planning and restraint come forward and the deeper circuits settle. The heart rate steadies. The breath moves low and smooth. The eyes soften as if the horizon came closer. The nervous system is not being tricked. It is being respected. It is being given a single river to follow rather than a map of flashing dots. Some homes hold a small ritual that makes space for this. The room where work begins stays quiet a little longer. The pocket where the phone sleeps remains a few steps away. A doorframe becomes a threshold that teaches the hands to reach for tools that build rather than screens that scatter. Distance is a gentle teacher. What is out of the hand is out of the habit. What is out of the habit is out of the nervous system's first reflex. The space between you and the glow becomes breathing room for the mind. There is a kind of richness that appears when the morning keeps this shape. Time feels thicker. Thought has weight again. A sentence that would have taken 10 attempts arrives whole. The small kindness you meant to show someone is not misplaced in the rush. You are not faster. You are truer. The hours do not multiply, yet what you place in them gains density. The day that once felt like a handful of sand becomes a small stack of smooth stones. This is not about never touching the world. It is about shaping the first touch. It is about letting what matters step into the light first, so that everything else knows where to stand. The phone does not have to be an enemy. It becomes a tool when it is given a time and a place. When the morning is not shaped in its image, there is a different confidence that arises when the nervous system learns that the first light belongs to purpose rather than to noise. You can hear it in the voice. You can see it in the eyes. On the days when the pattern is lost, compassion still belongs. Attention is tender by nature and can be startled back into old loops. If the morning goes sideways, shame adds nothing to the harvest. Begin again where you are. The vineyard does not close for the season because of a single wild branch. The careful hands return and the shape returns with them. What is practiced with mercy is practiced longer. What is practiced longer begins to define a life. Focus is wealth. Leakage is poverty. Let the lines sound through the chest like a quiet drumbeat. Let it soften the grip of hurry. Let it lift the chin from the glow toward the work that actually feeds you. The dividend is not only in results, it is in the nervous system that learns safety. It is in the soul that remembers its lane. It is in the steady feeling that you are not being thrown by the day, but carried by a current you chose. The morning becomes a gate that keeps your treasure safe, and a path that leads it forward. There is a certain kind of morning that feels like a hallway lined with doors that never end. What to wear, what to eat, where to begin. Each door asks for a tiny toll, a little sip of attention, and the sips add up before the day has even tasted meaning. The shoulders rise without being asked. The breath thins, as if the body is saving air for a sprint it never wanted to run. By the time the work is in front of you, a quiet exhaustion has already taken a seat. This is not weakness. This is the cost of carrying every choice into the present tense. A gentle story has been told to many of us. It says that keeping options open is wisdom, that flexibility means holding every door ajar, just in case a better room appears. The story promises freedom and delivers decision fatigue. The brain is a faithful worker, and it burns fuel with every evaluation. The heart tries to help and keeps scanning for the perfect path. The nervous system pays for the search with little bursts of urgency that leave a residue. Small frictions multiply. The day becomes a field of sand, and every step sinks a little. Pre-decisions create freedom. The words sound simple, and they carry weight. When certain choices are set before the sun rises, attention stops leaking into the cracks. The mind no longer bargains with itself about basic things. The deeper parts of you feel a soft relief, because they know where the rails are. The thinking centers do not need to push as hard, and the steady parts of the brain that love pattern get to lead. It is not about control for control's sake. It is about conserving strength for the places where it matters. Ancient wisdom loved the image of honest weights on balanced scales. The merchants at the city gate would check their measures before the market opened. A crooked scale meant a crooked day. A calibrated scale meant a stable day. The picture still speaks. When your inner scales are set in the morning, when the measures are honest and consistent, the prices you pay for each decision stop changing. You pay once with a clear choice, and you carry the benefit all day long. Many people keep a quiet covenant with themselves that holds the morning steady. It begins with time itself. Sleep and wake are given a window that becomes familiar, not to punish the body, but to teach it a rhythm that feels trustworthy. The next piece is first fuel, a simple pattern of water and a modest meal that does not need to be invented on the spot. The final piece is the first stretch of deep work set on the page before the day begins, a protected lane where the most honest task can start breathing. None of this is loud, none of this is dramatic. The power lives in the order. When a morning is shaped this way, the body answers with signals you can feel. The shoulders drop from their guard. The breath settles lower, as if the belly has become a quiet harbor. The eyes stop darting and start focusing. The heart finds a steadier beat that hums under everything you do. These are not tricks. They are the nervous system's response to reduced friction. The first minutes are no longer a maze, they are a path. The fear of rigidity often rises when this is described. The mind worries that creativity will suffocate if the frame is too firm. What actually happens is kinder. The frame carries the weight of ordinary choices, and the imagination is freed to play where it belongs. Boundaries do not strangle a river when they are shaped with care. They give the current strength, and the water moves farther with less loss. The same happens inside you. A few choices made once become a gentle channel, and the flow that used to swirl and stall begins to run true. On days when the pattern slips, blame only builds another wall. Some mornings begin with noise and wonder before they return. Compassion keeps the gate open for the next moment of clarity. Calibration is not a single act, it is a returning. The scales can be checked again, the measures can be set again. The city within you is not ruined by a rough morning. It is guided back to balance by a quiet sequence that you already understand. There is a certain dignity that comes from living this way. You can hear it in the voice when a person speaks of their day, as if it is theirs to shape. You can see it in the face when the small indecisions that used to clutter the first hour no longer ask for votes. Energy stops dripping into the seams of trivial choice and gathers around the work that deserves it. Time does not slow, yet it feels roomier. Pressure does not vanish, yet it feels more honest. The self meets the day with a spine instead of a shrug. Pre-decide or be divided. The line is firm and it is kind. It does not scold. It names a pattern that heals. Every pre-decision is a gift to your later self, a quiet agreement that saves you from 100 tiny quarrels. Every pre-decision is a promise kept in advance, a way of telling your nervous system that the ground will not shift under your feet. The choices made at the gate echo through the streets, and the streets begin to move with a steadier rhythm. The image returns of weights and scales, finding their balance. The hands that lift them do not rush. The eye that watches them is patient. When the measures are true, the trade is clean, the market is calm, and the day can flourish. So it is with you. When the windows of time are set, when the first nourishment is simple and ready, when the first stretch of real work waits like a clear lane, your inner market steadies. The noise outside may rise and fall, but the measures inside remain honest. Pre-decisions create freedom. The words are worth repeating until they feel like a key in the pocket. Freedom from the nagging whispers that ask the same questions every morning. Freedom from the spiral of maybe that steals the first light. Freedom for the deep work that defines your path. Freedom for the voice that speaks truth without hurry. The day is still unknown, the gate is known, and the city within you is ready to open its doors without losing itself in the opening. There are days that begin bright and end dull, days that open with crisp promise and close with a mind that feels sanded down. The body was ready, then the edge faded. Then the heart started to carry a quiet heaviness that did not match the hours invested. Many have named this discipline and called it strength. Often, it is exhaustion wearing a brave face. The nervous system can sprint, but it was not designed to sprint without a rhythm of recovery. The soul can carry weight, but it was not designed to carry it without a rhythm of release. A familiar slogan lives in the culture of effort: winners never slow down. The promise inside that line is intoxicating. It tells the tired mind that more speed will unlock the door that would not open yesterday. It tells the worried heart that more pressure will fix what pressure created. Wisdom interrupts the chant with a gentler sentence that carries more truth. Margin multiplies mastery, not because less work is magic, but because rhythm is medicine. The brain does not sharpen under endless strain. It sharpens when focus arrives in waves and is followed by quiet. The body does not grow strong in a grind that never lifts. It grows when exertion and rest shake hands. There is a cadence used by people who value both excellence and longevity. It feels almost musical, a strong stretch of attention, then a short clearing of the air, then the strong stretch again. The mind learns to pour itself fully, then to breathe, then to pour again. The lungs agree, the shoulders agree, the eyes find their depth again. There is nothing heroic in the pause, and yet it is the most courageous part because it refuses to worship panic. The pause teaches the nervous system that productivity does not require threat. The pause teaches the heart that worth does not require depletion. The science beneath this feels close and kind. When focus is held too long, the chemistry that supports attention begins to thin. Signals grow noisy, errors increase, and what once felt like flow becomes friction. Short rests allow the systems that guard clarity to refill. Blood finds the face again. Breath returns to the belly. The skin cools. The mind loosens its grip and then grips again with better fingers. The result is not less done. The result is sturdier work, cleaner choices, and an energy that lasts beyond the early afternoon. Some bring a small kindness to the end of these cycles, a note of gratitude sent to a person who helped, a few words of appreciation offered without a reason. a discreet gift left where it will warm another day. The act is brief and light, yet it alters the emotional weather inside the chest. Generosity signals safety to the nervous system. It reminds the body that effort is not the only currency. It reminds the mind that connection is also a form of strength. It reminds the soul that the goal is not only output, it is also honor. Ancient wisdom pictured life as both vessel and river, a cistern that stores and a spring that flows. The vessel without inflow becomes dust at the bottom. The spring without boundaries becomes a flood that destroys the field it was meant to feed. Together, they offer a pattern that modern life forgets at a cost. Store wisely so there is something to give. Flow wisely so what is given does not empty the source. When the day respects this, mastery begins to feel less like strain and more like stride. The work becomes a river that knows its banks. The person becomes a well that is not afraid of tomorrow. There is a quiet dignity that rises in those who live this way. The face carries less rush and more presence. The voice sounds grounded rather than hurried. Decisions come from depth rather than from the surface noise of urgency. The afternoon holds enough clarity to match the morning. Sleep comes cleaner. Wakefulness begins without resentment. This is not a fantasy. It is the natural fruit of a cadence that honors limits without apology. On the days when the rhythm is lost, shame is a poor teacher. Pressure will try to recruit shame to force a better outcome tomorrow. Wisdom chooses compassion and returns to cadence. The body is quick to learn when it is treated with respect. The mind is quick to return when it is met with patience. The heart forgives hours that went sideways when the next hours arrive with peace. Mercy keeps habits alive longer than scolding ever will. Margin multiplies mastery. The words are worth hearing more than once. They belong in the chest like a steady drum that does not rush the song. They belong on the desk like a small weight that keeps the page from blowing away. They belong in the spaces between tasks where the breath can widen and the gaze can lift. They belong because they tell the truth about how strength actually works. Strong is not frantic. Strong is not brittle. Strong is steady, generous, and repeatable. Picture again the cistern and the spring. One holds, one moves. Together they keep a city alive through feast and through famine. The day that begins with this image is less likely to collapse into noise. The work that is shaped by this image carries less regret. The life that honors this image can give more over time, not less. The mind stays clear enough to lead. The spirit stays soft enough to love. The body stays willing enough to keep going. Power with margin, not mania. The sentence is a gate and a path. It opens to a way of working that protects the center rather than sacrificing it. It opens to a way of living that blooms in the long term rather than burning hot and fading. It opens to a confidence that does not need to raise its voice. This is practical spirituality meeting emotional science. This is wisdom that builds a house and keeps it standing. There is a way the morning can hold all the threads without pulling them tight. It begins in a room that has not yet chosen noise, in a body that has not yet chosen haste. Breath arrives like a visitor at the door and is welcomed. Slow and low it moves in and out until the shoulders remember they are not armor. The heart hears the message in the rhythm and answers with a calmer drum. The brain, just waking from the currents of sleep, starts to entrain itself to this steadiness. A gate is forming, not a wall, a threshold. The day feels it and pauses as if in respect. Words of wisdom enter and sit down at the table. They do not shout and they do not hurry. A small passage is read with the same attention one gives to the face of a dear friend. A few lines are traced by hand so that meaning can travel from thought to wrist to page to breath again. This is practical spirituality. This is emotional science made human. The act of writing slows the mind to the speed of honesty. The nervous system catches the signal of coherence and begins to settle on it. Truth stops being a visitor and becomes the host. A quiet naming of what matters rises next, not as a command, as a recognition. The heart knows what would make the day ring true if it happened. The mind knows what would move the story forward. A short list forms, simple and real, and the fog thins. Ambiguity loses its favorite place to hide. You can feel the shift in the jaw and in the chest. Muscles unclench, choices sharpen, energy returns to the places that give life. Focus gathers like light in a single window. This is attention choosing wealth over leakage. This is the mind becoming a vineyard again. Somewhere nearby there is a page that waits for harvest and a page that stands guard. The harvest page holds the task that carries meaning, not the loudest task, the truest one. The guard page holds the gates that remain closed through the early hours. News can wait. Feeds can wait. Messages can wait. Waiting is not a punishment. It is the courtesy that purpose asks of the world while the morning shapes its center. The body relaxes when the gates are clear. The breath deepens when novelty bows to order. The eyes steady when the glow is no longer the first light they seek. Time itself receives a gentle frame, so the day does not wobble. Sleep and waking find a window that repeats often enough to feel like trust. First nourishment is simple, chosen already, not negotiated. There is a lane where deep work will begin, not squeezed into leftover space, but honored as a first offering. Calibration happens here, the way a merchant once checked honest weights at the city gate. The measures become true before the market opens. The market is calmer because of it. The inner market becomes calmer too. Work arrives, and it finds a cadence instead of a cliff. Attention pours itself into a focused stretch, then steps back for a breath, then pause again. The body understands. Chemistry renews. Errors stay fewer. Clarity remains loyal. Across these waves, something warm and surprising often appears. A small note of gratitude sent to a helper. A quiet blessing released without fanfare. A little generosity that changes the weather inside the chest. Safety signals multiply. The mind remembers that effort is not the only currency. The soul remembers that honor is also a form of strength. Throughout this liturgy, the metaphors of old walk beside the science of now. The city gate guarded without fear, the vineyard pruned with care, the scales balanced with honest hands, the cistern that stores and the spring that flows. These pictures are not distant. They are the nervous system learning stories that keep it steady. The body listens to images as much as to instructions. The heart trusts a pattern it can feel. The mind follows what it can see with its inner eye. Some mornings will stray from this path. A night may be restless. A call may arrive early. A memory may press too hard. The practice remains gentle. The gate is still yours. The fragments of the morning still gather when breath returns to its deeper place and words return to their truer tone. Shame is a poor architect. Compassion builds structures that last. The liturgy holds because it is light and repeatable. It asks for presence, not perfection. It asks for rhythm, not performance. It asks for honesty, not heroics. By the time the day fully opens, a quiet strength has taken its seat. The voice sounds less hurried and more human. The gaze carries focus without strain. Decisions come from depth instead of from the surface glare of urgency. What matters most has already been welcomed to the front of the line. The city within the self begins its work under a sky that feels wider. The streets keep a steadier pace. The noise outside may rise and fall, yet the measures inside remain true. This is a daily practice in the truest sense, not a list of feats. A way of being, breath that teaches safety, wisdom that teaches alignment, focus that protects value, pre-decisions that protect energy, cadence that protects mastery, spiritual truth speaking in everyday language, emotional neuroscience nodding in agreement. A morning shaped not by pressure, but by presence. A day that starts with dignity and ends with light still in the hands. Morning after morning, a pattern has taken shape. Breath that steadies, words that align, attention that gathers, choices that are set with kindness, effort that moves in waves with room for rest. Ancient images have walked beside modern understanding, and both have pointed in the same direction. Guard the gate, and the city within you keeps its peace. Prune with care, and the vineyard bears fruit. Calibrate the scales, and the market of the day grows honest. Hold like a cistern, and flow like a spring, and strength becomes sustainable. What begins as a few quiet minutes becomes a way of being. The nervous system learns a gentler tempo and keeps it. The mind discovers clarity without strain and trusts it. The heart remembers dignity and carries it into conversations that once bent it out of shape. Work feels cleaner. Speech sounds kinder. Time feels wider. None of this depends on a perfect morning. It depends on a living rhythm that forgives missteps and returns to center without drama. There is a kind of confidence that doesn't need to raise its voice. It comes from alignment rather than from adrenaline. It sounds like someone who knows their own gait and tends it. It looks like someone who spends attention where it multiplies meaning. It feels like relief in the chest and warmth in the face and steadiness in the gaze. The day still brings weather. The inner house keeps its walls. The city inside becomes a place where wisdom can dwell and work can flourish. The old and the new continue their conversation. Solomon's pictures of order and discernment. Neuroscience describing how breath and focus and language shape the body's responses. Together they draw a map that is both spiritual and practical, both tender and firm. This map does not demand heroics. It honors small, faithful moves that reshape the morning and through the morning reshape the life. Patterns become promises kept in motion. Promises kept in motion become character. Character becomes quiet authority. There is one question that waits at the edge of this closing light, simple and strong. What would begin to change if the first light belonged to wisdom for the next month?